Yeah, remember no vocal fry.
No vocal fry. What does it mean to be third culture?
Just keep talking like that. Hello everyone! Join us as we go on an adventure from third culture kids to third culture adults.
Buckle up for a roller coaster of misadventures and the real answer to the question,
But where are you really from?
Dun, dun, dun.
Hi, for those who tune in the first time, I am Jess. I'm a creative director by day and a third culture blob by night.
And hi, I'm Taya. I'm a mixed up mutt from the East and West, ready to detangle the cultural code, one country at a time.
Yeah, good luck with that.
I'm trying really hard. And today, we're gonna talk about
the topic on the nose. What does it mean to be third culture?
So, what is the definition of third culture? Let's start with that for all you people who may not know what it is.
So we Googled it, and we're gonna read it, what we Googled as a start. Definition: being a third culture kid, bracket TCK, means growing up in a culture different from the one in which the parents were raised.
So it refers to the unique blend of fusion of the home culture, which is the culture of your parents, to the host culture, which is the country in which you're living.
And creating a third unique culture that incorporates elements of both.
Making that 3 cultures. Wow!
Yeah, so I think that's like...
Or more, 3 plus.
3 plus.
3 plus cultures.
We talked about this. I think it's 3 plus. It's really hard to define how many culture it should be included in third culture realm because you just never know. Like, including us, our background is already more than 3 culture.
I think there's something to be said about, like, that definition of having the word even third culture kids or third culture adults in our case, because we're adults, where you kind of have solace in that identity or that definition of being a third culture kid. Because we don't have that, like, one particular. What does it mean to be a third culture kid or a third culture adult? Like, what are some of the characteristics and challenges that we go through, do you think?
So personally, my third culture journey started, I think we talked about this a little bit in the first episode, but I didn't know there was a term to actually describe my identity till like recently when we talked about third culture. Because I always feel like, you know, kind of like I mentioned, I consider myself an immigrant back in America.
Right.
But on the paper term, immigrants also like legally you have to be a certain citizen to that country, right?
Yeah.
I don't have that. I was like visa hopping from different visa to different visa, and I feel like
is it through visa marriages or
unfortunately not that
legally?
Kind of visa. You know, I've been asking my friends, all the gay friends, to marry me so that I can just like take a break from this visa hopping journey.
Gotta prove your love somehow, though.
They all say no to me.
I wonder why.
Anyways, so every time when I say I'm an immigrant, I also feel like that's not necessarily the case. Till like, you know, recently third culture as a fairly new term came up. I'm like, I'm that because part of what we talked about third culture also means that you don't know the time frame you're gonna be in one place, right?
Yeah. So like the lady who coined the term third culture kids, she meant it as like people who are there temporarily based on their parents' work. But I also think it's more general as well. Like yeah. But it's the temporary part is
because you never know. Like the temporary, in my case, was not voluntary at all. It has nothing to do with my parents. It has everything to do with the international politics, and you know. So but the word temporary stays true. But in your shoes, how do you define yourself as third culture kid or adult?
Right. So I don't know, because for me, it's not because my parents either had work in another country that I was there. It's because I grew up in Japan with a foreign mother and a Japanese dad. And then I moved to Canada with a Canadian mother, but also already being kind of Japanese. So that term doesn't really apply in terms of work, but it applies in terms of not really being there for like the host culture and what's the other type? Host culture and the main culture. Anyways,
Yeah.
not really being truly of either, and just transitioning for both. So I think it applies to anyone who is not able to identify themselves with one particular culture, or even as like an immigrant to another culture. I think the definitions also of immigrant and third culture kind of intersect.
Right.
But like for me, it's a little bit of both, to be honest.
Yeah.
But even me being here in Japan, like, I don't know if I'm going to be here permanently. I think a thing that third culture kids have is when they're moving around, they also don't know where they're going to be in the future as well. Like, for us, like, where do you know where you're going to end up being?
No. Like,
forever, or?
Yeah. So usually, not so long ago, somebody asked me what my 5 years plan is.
Yeah.
You know, like, that question is also so funny to me because...
It's almost as polarizing as where are you really from.
Exactly, because I'm like, you know, the past 5 years, I did not expect myself to move to Japan, but you never know. But that's like part of the, I want to say part of the drill of being third culture is you never know how long you're going to stay one place for a long time. And because you're not here to fight for a citizenship, you're here for like very different reasons. It really depends on individuals. So it's never black and white. So even if we Google the definition, it also doesn't fully serve us or our circumstance.
But we latch on to third culture because we don't have any other definition.
Exactly. Like, basically, it's like this whole battle of surviving in the gray zone, almost. So I would say, like, that's why we want to really dive deeper into third culture as a topic, because first is underrepresented because part of reason is fairly new term. The concept is fairly new. Not a lot of people actually talk about it because we're all still trying to figure out what exactly that means being part of our identity. Yeah.
There's also expats or expatriates as well, which is so technically if we were expats and if we had kids, then they would be third culture.
Would they?
I think so.
Third culture or immigrants.
Oh,
second generation.
Wait, but if we had kids in Japan and they're raised here,
and they're like the first generation and second generation, right? Is that kind of how like a lot of my friends describe themselves in America? They're like, I'm the first generation. My parents are immigrants, and
right. Okay.
So it'll start from us, but stop. What?
Start and stop? Do you start
with
or do you
us?
Stop?
You start.
Should I stay? Should I go?
Should I stay or should I go?
You should stay.
Yeah.
Don't go.
Okay. Cool.
Don't leave me.
Yeah.
So, what other things do you think make up a third culture kid?
Personally, the moment I start to get very confused about what my culture is. It's such a, I don't know, very surreal concept, maybe to a lot of monocultural people, is that you really can't pinpoint the moments or the time frame or the period of culture that could define who you are. Yeah. So I think it all comes from you move around trying to survive and adapt into different society. You're trying to survive and then adapt and then code switch into different environments. And then you just like so busy with keep switching and flipping, you eventually kind of lost yourself. And I think that's also like part of the being a third culture. It's not so glamorous. It's not like we're so cool as people. It just there's
we're
a lot of.
I thought we were so cool.
We're cool, but it's because we're trying really hard. Yeah. But it's also because
Tell us we're cool. Please.
We are cool. But it comes with a lot of internal like conflicts and confusion.
Do you think that made me just think of because I'm wearing this aloha shirt, which is I'm neither Hawaiian or whatever, but do you think third culture kids are in danger of cultural appropriation if they don't belong to any particular culture?
Culture appropriation is such a hot topic right now.
Yeah.
I personally try to be very careful, but nobody's perfect in that sense. I think as third culture, it's easy for people to label us as we do something or dress a certain way as culture appropriation. But I think it always comes with more context.
Yeah. Or is it because we're a third culture that we get to culture appropriate things?
No, never.
Do we get to be super racist?
We don't get to be.
I think that's a pass. Just like the Gaijin pass, we got the third culture pass. You heard it here first, guys.
We don't get a pass. But, however, I think as third culture people in general, we tend to be more empathetic in different situations. We tend to be more open-minded in different situations because we know nothing is that black and white.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Because everyone globally is interconnected, and especially now with social media as well. When you look at a post online, for the most part, you can tell what country they're from by their accent, but the things that people are into or things that are trending are generally the same. Like funny stuff, taboo stuff, it's all popular regardless of what culture.
Yeah.
So we can kind of like...
Yeah, but, of course there are a group of communities that will dissect deeper, right? For very different reasons.
Yeah.
But I think from third culture perspectives is because we're in this like fluidity of culture intersections, we learn the perspective of not to take things to an extreme. And then pick your battle, basically, because we have to. It's not like it's a choice. We kind of have to survive. You
kind of live in the safe middle kind of.
Yeah.
That's probably why I do extreme things outside of the realm of culture, so that I can feel something.
Like what?
I don't know, like water fasting for multiple days, or like...
You did that!
Or like going on extremely long bike rides, or just doing like extreme things so that you can...
You're crazy, man.
You feel something, but like, it's safe when it comes to like personality, or I don't know.
That is true. My extreme is I love true crime documentary, and I watch that to go to sleep better.
That's very... that's...
I want to feel something. I want to know my circumstance is actually not that bad.
You want to know that someone's, like, how to defend yourself if someone's gonna kill you.
Not necessarily. I just want to know, like, some shitty things happen around the world, and then being a third culture person who's, like, so confused all the time is not...
Actually, there's I wonder if there's something to be said about being a third culture kid and knowing the news or all the bad shit in all of these different countries. Does that make you, more aware or more sad or happy?
I've come across both type of third culture people. Some people and I don't think there's right or wrong. Again, we're all just so busy with trying to survive. So some people, they're so oblivious, right? Because they kind of, a part of them kind of just get turned off.
Yeah.
because that's how they survive. But some people, they become very hyper aware of what's going on and then what's happening around the world, because that's how they want to survive. And neither is right or wrong, I would say. I would say I'm leaning towards like the latter, because in nature I am curious and I do want to be more aware, but that's my own personal choice. But when I'm like talking to third culture people who are not like that, I also like try to be more, give it more grace and compassion in terms of they are also just trying their best.
I don't know if it's like an age thing or if it's just like me not caring anymore thing, or because when I was younger in my 20s, I used to be really into like, oh, I should read the news every day and know what's going on everywhere. But now I just look at social media. I'm like, oh, look at that cute little dog.
Yeah, because it is constantly, like we know this, constantly there are things happening around the world. It's very sad. The world is ugly.
It is.
But the older you get, the more you're like, the beauty in it, you find happiness in the most simple things. It's also that there's nothing wrong with it.
Oh, speaking of, there's this like Instagram account or this podcast. It's called the Happiness Broadcast, and they just show you happy news. So I like looking at that. It's really fun. It's very cute.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you. Back to third culture kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, what else do you think third culture kids are like, or suffer, or challenges, pain points?
Can we talk about the grief? Like every time you have to leave a culture behind. I think that's something we all experience on some level.
Yeah.
But again, we're too busy to actually sit down and talk about it.
Yeah. Every time you leave behind a whole community. Yeah. You know, even like your favorite cafe and things that you build up over the years of living somewhere. It's just all gone. And then maybe someday you'll visit back there again and it's all, you know, bulldozed over and there's like a new condo there. Or
yeah. It's always unknown. I remember my first grief over leaving a culture behind was such a devastating experience.
Tell me your story.
And then it's actually it was probably the second time when I had to do that, actually. So not the first time. So the first time was that I'm so sorry. So the first time was, of course, when I left Taiwan, right? And then I went to the States. Like that one was sad, but it's also because it's more than just leaving a culture. It's like you as a young adult about to leave your house. So it's a mix. But the second time was the first time you realize you had no control over how long you could get to stay in one place or how long you can spend your time with your loved ones that you work so hard to establish those relationships with. And the first time to me was like when I had to leave the state for the first time. So I really didn't expect that to happen that quickly, but that hit way harder than going through a breakup. Like because it's the mind fuck of you never were programmed to think you're gonna leave your friends and family behind or everything that you are familiar with behind forcingly.
Does that make you think like whenever you go to a new culture that you're not even gonna bother because you're gonna leave them anyways?
I think the opposite.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure there are people like that, but to me it's more like, okay, now I know, since I have no control over the amount of the time I get to spend in this place with this person or with this group of people, the moment I find them and then click with them, I'm gonna stay as present as I can with the time I have.
Right. You make the most of your time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's me personally, how I deal with that every time I have to go into a new environment is I quickly, you know, you'll have to go through few like bad apples to go keep finding a good ones that really match with your energy. But once you find it, I'm like, I'm gonna latch on it.
My best friend.
Yay, bestie forever.
Yeah. It is interesting how, like, because of all of the grief and loss from moving around so much, apparently third culture kids have a tendency to just be really intense when it comes to friendships, relationships, just because they're like, oh my god, I found someone that I can actually chat with and identify with.
Yeah.
I find, like, when I move around, I do latch on to other third culture kids more so, because it's easier to get along with people who kind of understand that sort of, like, intensity or even just that familiar background as well.
Yeah.
Do you think third culture kids experience, like, their emotional culture somewhere and, like, their physical culture somewhere, or, like, emotionally feel a little bit more akin to maybe the Canadian culture? Whereas physically, I don't know. Yeah, maybe, like, fashion-wise, more like combination of Asian.
I think you're pretty versatile when it comes to styles, though.
That's true.
Because like during summer, you do show more. In a nice way.
I think you're just trying to nicely say that I don't have a sense of style, but that's okay.
I love all
her form over function, remember? It's true, actually. I've got these awesome pants that have, like, 4 different pockets. One, like, kind of a little bit farther down the pants, and those are, like, my favorite pair of pants. And they're black, and they go with everything. Very functional.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think me, my styles before it will get more easily affected by local culture when I was younger. But now I realize, because I really rely heavily on self-expression, heavily on how I dress. Like, fashion's been my thing. So I know that's a very important ingredient for me to stay grounded if I dress well. Again, the give no fuck mentality is, I'm going to dress however I want. If I feel good in that style, I'm going to stay with that style. So I think I keep that even after I move here. Putting the color and pattern aside, like, the style itself is like,
that's something you can, like, keep with you wherever you
if I show something, it's because I feel good showing it. I have less desire to kind of wonder what other people might think. If they like it, great. If they don't, it's not my problem.
Yeah. Do you think you can, if you're walking down the street with a bunch of people, you can tell who is either expat, immigrant, foreigner, or third culture?
Totally.
Just by, like, looking at how they walk or how they...
Totally. I think the demeanor is, like, so different.
Yeah. More confident.
Or just how they... I think it's beyond the styles. The styles can be deceitful, but...
worldly and wise.
But how they talk, how they behave, how they sit, how they even zip on their coffee, you know?
It's just different from, I guess. Especially in Japan, because Japanese people are very reserved and they want to take up as least amount of space as possible. That reminds me of just, like, traveling alone, and as a third culture kid, you're probably moving alone or doing things alone.
Yeah.
I find there's something similar in terms of, like, grief and loss as well. When you leave somewhere and when you're experiencing something alone and you don't have that friend or someone to share it with, it's such a lonely experience.
It's very lonely.
Yeah.
It's very lonely. I think a lot of people could relate to this sense of feelings when you just moved, or when you just, like, visited somewhere that you are familiar with and then got back to the reality. Is, I remember, like, the next morning post travel, when I open my eyes and I stare at the ceilings, I'm like, this is the wrong ceiling. I want to go back to that other ceiling. But it's like, it's inevitable, I would say. But I think that's also why a lot of third culture people around us, like including the both of us, we really give more grace in very different situations. It's like there's a constant grief we carry that we don't get to talk about, and we don't know how to talk about it.
Yeah.
But it's been there.
To be honest, I didn't really like think to articulate it because it's such a normal part of
it's a part of
the life.
Yeah.
Of, you know, I don't know if it's just TCKs, but also moving around as well.
Yeah.
So you don't really register that as something that's so taxing until, you know, when we're talking about doing the podcast and just looking at, oh, what are some of the issues that third culture kids go through? It's like, oh yeah, for sure. There's a huge grief and loss, and every time you move, and you just don't know, hey, am I ever going to have that same friend group again?
Yeah. Also, every time when you move around, it's not just the grief of leaving things behind, like things you love, people you love behind, but also the fear of, one, they might forget about you. Their life is going to move on.
FOMO.
Yeah, their life is going to move on without you.
Yeah.
That's only natural, but it's a very scary feeling.
Do you ever get jealous of, like, your old best friends having other best friends? And I'm like, who this bitch?
Yeah, of course. I'm like, let me meet them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It better be cool.
Yeah. They better not be cooler than me.
Yeah. How do you keep in touch with all your, like, international friends? What's the best way? Give us some advice.
Oof. You know, one thing I'm really bad at is keeping in touch with people that's not in the same city. Because I think one thing people also don't know about moving around, and I think I wish everyone could have more compassion in that situation, as when you moved around, when you just got into this new environment.
Yeah.
A lot of time we have so much on our plate, we really don't have the emotional bandwidth to go through a list of people that we constantly have to.
You've got so many friends. I've got like 2.
I've got a lot of friends. Wow. I'm very lucky.
So popular.
It's not even that. It's like
I've got like my mom back home, my dog.
Yeah.
Sometimes I video call the dog.
Yeah. So I don't have like back in Taiwan, it's on rotation. Like I have like handfuls of friends, right, from like childhood.
A whole handful.
Wow.
Are they like people?
And then they, you know, I think I'm lucky enough for them to like always understand my environment's constantly changing. So they won't like really chase me down and then lecture me being like, why you stop loving us, right?
But also they only lecture you if they care about you. There's like an element of like sooner or later you just kind of grow apart, and even though you really like that friendship or that person, you just know that because you're never ever going to live in that same city as them again.
The values have to be different, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And then I think later on I moved to the States, and then, you know, I feel like I've always been in big cities. So San Francisco, New York, both city made by multicultural background.
There's a lot of transient people in those.
So they pay more like empathy towards one another in that regard.
Yeah.
So all the friends I made back there is the same thing. We all have mutual understanding. It's not that we stop caring for each other.
Yeah.
Is life goes on.
Yeah.
We all have life to worried about. If we need each other, we will be there for each other. But you don't have to have this like routine, constant check-in schedule.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. My friends and I, we tried to make like a monthly call, but that just didn't like,
no,
because time zones and everything, you kind of forget and you're like, oh shit. So I never wanted to be like a burden, but you know, you just keep in touch by like the occasional, hey, how's everything going?
Yeah.
I'm really lucky that my friends also, you know, they're pretty international too and understand.
Another thing is the realization of us as third culture people. I think the way we change or evolve as a person is a little bit faster or rapidly, more frequent, I would say. It's not even faster, but frequently, because the environment that's like around us. Now, the fact is,
Pokemon battles and evolved.
Yes, I'm like the most advanced Pokemon right now.
I think there's so many. All right, wow.
But you know, like, but I feel like some of my older friendships, right, that got part ways is because they constantly applied this old version of me onto me. And I got, you know, and then I think it's not that they did anything wrong. It just, I feel like when we're in our position, it's hard to just stay the same.
Right. Or it's kind of like, also when I went back to Belleville, Ontario a couple of years ago just to do stuff and things, and I met some people from my hometown. It's really interesting to be like, oh wow, it brings out the side of me that I was when I was in high school, but I've also changed so much since then as well. But then it kind of got to the point where I felt weird hanging out with them because it wasn't me anymore. So not that like either people are bad or good, it's just it's a different you now. But I don't know if that's just culture or age or
I think it's like naturally that's it's all of the above. It just, in our position, it's a little bit more complicated, relatively speaking. When we go through those changes, like we can't really explain how we change into who we are now, why or when. It's not linear.
Do you think you have a different accent when you change cultures or like go back to different places?
Yes. I would say right now when I speak Chinese, it's less about accent. My Chinese gone pretty bad.
Oh, okay.
But I think all my friends, and then my family, they are generous enough to fill in the blank for me. So I will like start half sentence and they will like complete the second half. In terms of accent, I don't know if my Chinese has like a weird accent now because of it. It just like English.
So what you're saying is you suck at all these languages.
I really suck at all the languages I speak right now, because even English, it turned into a really weirdly structured language to me sometimes. Like when I talk, I'm like, let me start over. That doesn't make sense. That sentence doesn't make any sense. In terms of accent, I think now my accent is less expressive than before.
Oh, okay. Because you don't get to like see the nuances of, or hear the nuances of, I don't know, the dialect or whatever.
Yeah, like even when I was watching our previous episode, I feel like my accent in general is the same. It just like those like nuances is, I used to talk a little bit sharper than that, or I used to talk a little bit more aggressive than that, but now it's like all mellow out, and I know for sure it's because of the local culture.
Right. Yeah, I also find like when I speak English in Japan, for example, in the workplace, I try to use simple English. So in terms of, you know, not dumbing down, but just making it understandable for everyone, you end up getting used to that style of speaking. And so when I hear someone using, you know, big words, I'm just like, oh, sounds so pretentious.
But, you know, like I used to, speaking of pretentious, like when I was younger and I went back and visit Taiwan, right? Or even when I was still in Taiwan, I used to judge people who mix English and Chinese because I thought that was super pretentious and unnecessary.
But now you get it.
Now I had no choice.
So all the pretentious people, they have a reason for being pretentious.
I apologize for all my judgmental ears.
I think to all the pretentious people.
Not the pretentiousness, but you know, I know the struggle.
I've heard some third culture people have very interesting, like it's kind of like half Australian or half English, but not quite there. So you're kind of like, oh, but where are you really from?
I wish I have that. I wish. Yeah,
my one friend, she's from Hong Kong, but went to an international school, was also living in London for a bit and also in Toronto, and now she lives in New York, and her accent's kind of British, but also English, but yeah, it's interesting.
One of my best friends in San Francisco, she's Indian and American, so every time when she speaks, It's like music to your ear.
I love the Indian English accent.
Yeah.
It's so...
And then she doesn't even have to try.
Yeah.
And then she can just simply say, Jess, I can't. And I'm like, I say that.
I can't.
Say that again. Yeah.
Shout out to Bonita. I can't.
Shout out to Indica. So, yeah, but no. To me, in my case, it's not that obvious.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like an imposter in your own culture, or like wherever culture that you call home?
Every single fucking day, man.
Wait, like here or Taiwan or America or?
I think Taiwan and America.
Okay, so you feel like an imposter everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Maybe
you are an imposter.
I am.
Are you a secret spy? Actually, I think third culture kids would make really good spies.
We're not smart enough.
True.
But
sorry, on a tangent, I read fun fact. People who are recruited for being spies are actually, they have really shitty upbringing, and so that's why they're able to detach from their like people and make really good spies, because they can drop their families and friends at like a drop of a hat.
So basically you're saying all of them, they have narcissistic personality disorders.
Kind of. So they recruit people who have like shitty upbringings, who are smart but also kind of like have traumatic childhood.
Where can I nominate people? I have a list.
You just gotta call the CIA, like, hello.
I do have some names.
But you can't make it too obvious, though, you know?
Yeah.
They're obviously spies.
Cool. Yeah, so imposter, I think my most recent experience is, now I will go back and, to visit, what? So every year, I will go back to Taiwan. I recognize that building, but the moment I walk past people, I feel like I want to hide myself.
Right. Because they're like looking at you, like they know, oh, you're not from here.
Yeah. It's weird. Have you ever had that?
Yeah, all the time. Like, especially in Japan as well, because, you know, technically, I'm supposed to be Japanese. So,
yeah.
But I'm so not. And, like, everyone always constantly reminds me that I'm not.
Yeah.
And so I had this huge, I'm supposed to be, but I'm not kind of thing. But then whenever people point out things that make me not Japanese, it's kind of like I get really defensive about it. Like, for example, like when, you know, someone at work is like, oh, wow, your Japanese, like, improved in the last 2 months because I'm speaking more Keigo, like, which is formal Japanese. I'm kind of getting a little defensive, be like, well, of course I'm from here. Like, I already knew how to speak kind of thing is what I'm thinking in my head.
Yeah, but can I say something to that comment?
Say something.
So I feel like at least in my shoes, I would rather a Japanese commenting on my Japanese skills and being like, oh, your Japanese is so good, than an American telling me that my English is so good. Like, I think because of the intent behind it is kind of different. Over here, it's like, I would like to think in general where they're coming from is they appreciate you try to speak the language. Yeah, so it's not necessarily like they're trying to score your Japanese, but more like we appreciate you try, and then we do understand, and you know that from that angle. Versus back in America, I get really offended when people say your English is good.
Yeah.
Because I know oftentimes what they mean is like, we didn't expect you to speak perfect English, you to have no accent, or you can use big words. And that's condescending. So I don't like that.
It's more like being othered.
Yeah, but over here it's more like out of appreciation. Yeah. Thank you for trying.
Yeah. That's true. So many challenges being a third culture kid or an adult.
I'm saying. But I feel like this is why we started this podcast, right? Because I think the topic itself is such an important things to be verbalized.
It's important, and also, like, by giving a definition, we still think that there's so many gray areas, right? We're trying so hard to, like, define what it is to be a third culture kid, what are the, you know, the characteristics and challenges, but it's also, there's so much still yet to be, like, discovered or yet to be dove into, I suppose. Like,
Yeah.
I'm wondering about, like, statistics around third culture and, you know, different things like languages or how they grow, what kind of career opportunities, things like that. It's so vastly different, and there's a lot of gray areas that you just latch onto anything that's like, oh, this is a defining thing, I'm a third culture kid.
Yeah. So, like, to wrap up, you know, we asked the questions in the beginning, what does it mean to be third culture? There's no definite answer. I think if you feel very confused about your identity cultural wise, that's normal. That's okay. You're not alone. And
there's millions of us.
There really is.
Yeah.
Millions of us.
I looked it up. Millions.
Millions of us. And we're open up this conversation so that people can kind of join us and keep talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, so tell us about your experiences. Like, what's your cultural makeup? Do you feel like 30% something, 30% something else? Are you like 3 cultures? Are you 3+ cultures?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're listening from Spotify, just drop a comment. Yeah. Watching from YouTube, drop a comment. Found us on Instagram, drop a comment.
Or on X, formerly Twitter,
drop a comment.
What else?
TikTok. You watch on TikTok, drop a comment.
Mail us a letter, drop a comment.
Drop a comment. Yay!
Is it time for our thought of the day? Is that what we're calling it now?
Yeah, that's what I've
just said it was. Or our contemplation of the day.
I like that.
Oh, there's snacks in here. We didn't even get to... You've been hiding these snacks from me, Jess.
I think it's your turn now. This time? Okay. Is it?
I don't know, is it? I think so.
Yeah.
Alright, here we go. This one better be good. Oh, alright. To live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people exist. That is all. Oscar Wilde. Is it Wilde or Wilde? Wilde.
Wilde.
Oscar Wilde. Well, there you have it.
That's the end of our episode!
Let's all exist together. We did it, Jess. High five.
I hate you!